I've always loved Lunar New Year at my in-laws' house. The red lanterns strung across the hallway, the scent of five spice and ginger simmering on the stove, the way Grandpa Chen's laugh would boom through the rooms like a warm invitation. This year, though, I could feel something crackling in the air, an unexpected tension that I soon realized was all because of my brother-in-law, Jason. It started the moment I walked through the door, mustering my best gongs fa kai and giving a slight bow to Grandpa and Grandma Chen. My Mandarin isn't perfect, but they always appreciate the effort. Grandma's eyes crinkled in delight every time I said the greeting correctly, and she'd slap the red envelope into my palm with a triumphal. This year, though, I noticed Jason linger at the door, arms folded, watching me with something like calculation in his gaze. "Lily? Right?" he said, stepping forward. He tried for friendly, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Why don't you show me how you say that?" He motioned grandly, as if he were hosting his own little competition. I paused, glancing at my sister Mia, who'd slipped behind him and shot me a worried look. "Sure," I said, raising my eyebrows. "Gongs fa kai." I said it slowly, clearly, aiming the tones just right. Grandpa Chen nodded approvingly. Grandma beamed. Jason's face remained eerily still. "Not bad," he said, clapping once, "but real New Year's greetings have way more nuance. Let me show you how a native speaker does it." He took a deep breath, dipped into a very shaky gongs fa kai. His tones were off by a mile, and his pronunciation sounded like gongs chi fa kai, raising accusing, wealth with snare, at least to my ears. But he puffed out his chest, waiting for applause. I buried a smile. The old folks giggled behind him, exchanging glances over his head. Grandpa cleared his throat. "You're from Beijing, right, Jason?" Jason didn't skip a beat. "Yep, born and raised. My parents live in Chaoyang district." He nodded eagerly, looking to Grandpa for approval. "I grew up speaking Mandarin at home." My heart skipped. Mia squeezed my arm. "Beijing?" That was news. Mia's degree in sinology meant she'd spent a summer in Chengdu. She would have known if Jason were a dialect speaker. "Chaoyang district?" she asked carefully. "That's interesting. I thought your family was from Sichuan province." His smile flickered. "Oh yeah, Sichuan. But they moved when I was a baby." He waved a dismissive hand, as though geography were trivial in the face of greater deceit. I stepped in, my voice calm. "I spent a year studying in Beijing." "You know the neighborhood around the 798 Art District, right?" I asked, raising one eyebrow. He swallowed, glanced at Grandma. "Sure, great galleries there." My internal alarm bells screamed. I shifted tactics. "I mean the Wuxong area, right by the Olympic Village." I asked, casual. "I used to take the 10 tram to work every morning through there." He blinked, sweat forming at the nape of his neck. "Well, see, I took the subway," he stammered. Grandma's smile froze. Grandpa peered over his glasses. "Didn't you say your parents worked at the National Railway?" he asked. Jason's gaze flicked to my sister. Mia's face was draining pale. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The room felt suddenly too small. My Chinese greeting had been a pretext, exposing his shaky grasp of his own backstory. In that heartbeat, I realized what had been happening behind the scenes. The last few months, we'd seen a series of odd texts on our family group chat, invitations to fund an investment opportunity, urgent laments about tuition and down payments, vague pleas for loans. We'd all passed them off as some embarrassing fraud attempt from Grandma's email hacked, but I'd filed them away in the back of my mind. Jason had been funneling money out of the family pool, tuition, car loans, maybe even Grandma's nest egg, claiming emergencies that felt contrived. And now here he was, masquerading as the native Mandarin speaker, demanding my bonus just 2 weeks ago to bail out his alleged debts. Suddenly, his Chinese greeting faux pas was just the beginning. He'd tried to embarrass me, but I'd turned the tables by speaking the language he'd pretended to own. And in the silence that followed, I knew his carefully constructed facade was starting to crumble. Grandpa cleared his throat. "Why don't you sit down, son?" he said, voice low but carrying gravitas. "I think you owe Lily an apology." Jason sank into a chair, his face ashen. Mia perched beside him, her expression one of betrayal and protective fury. I stepped forward, heart pounding, but spoke softly. "I'm sorry you felt you had to lie, Jason, but we all deserve the truth." His head bowed, shoulders hunched. I never wanted to hurt anyone." His voice cracked. "I was desperate." "Desperate what?" I asked. My Mandarin came back to me as I slipped into it reflexively. Wei Xing Jia Zhao Gushi. Why fabricate the story? He closed his eyes. I lost my job 6 months ago, he said in English. I didn't tell anyone because I was ashamed. Then the tuition, then the car loan, then I owed my landlord money. I panicked, and it just kept snowballing. When you got that bonus, I thought, maybe, he trailed off, utterly defeated. Grandma Chen's eyes filled with tears. Why didn't you tell us? She whispered, voice trembling. We would have helped you. Mia leaned over, her voice gentle but firm. We could have worked something out. She looked at me. You texted me about his loan stuff. He never asked us for help. He looked at Mia, shame flooding his face. I thought, maybe you'd hate me. I thought if I stayed in control, kept everyone at a distance, I'd save face. But I just dug myself deeper. The weight of his confession settled in the room like a damp cloak. My heart ached for him, for my sister, for my grandparents, who had always believed in the honesty and integrity of each of their children and grandchildren. I took a breath and turned to Grandma. I think Jason needs more than my bonus, I said in Mandarin. Ta jia wumen de bangzu he liu jia. He needs our help and understanding. Grandma nodded, reaching for his hand. Then I faced Jason. Here's what we'll do, I said, voice firm but warm. I'll hold on to that $12,000 bonus as a trust fund for you, released only when you take these steps, get a stable job, set up a repayment schedule for what you owe, and come clean to each person you borrowed from. I spelled out a plan on the table, family loans formalized, a budget plan, help finding a new job. He looked up, relief and gratitude mingling in his eyes. Thank you. It wasn't easy, Mia said, voice soft. But it's not about punishment. It's about rebuilding trust. Grandpa patted Jason's shoulder. You lost your way, but it's the coming back that shows character. In that moment, the tension in the room dissolved. We moved into the kitchen for steaming bowls of jiaozi dumplings, stuffed with pork, cabbage, and ginger. Grandma's special recipe. The clatter of chopsticks and the hiss of soup on the stove erased the hardness of the morning. As I bit into a warm dumpling, I realized how close we'd come to irreparable damage, but also how strong our family bond was, able to withstand betrayal, shame, and fear when met with honesty, forgiveness, and a willingness to solve problems together. And as the Lunar New Year fireworks began to crackle outside, painting the sky with light, I knew that this would be the year we truly honored our heritage by embracing truth, owning our mistakes, and moving forward together. The bamboo steamers cleared, and the last of the dumplings dipped into vinegar, soy sauce. I felt a quiet resolve settle over our family that I'd never sensed before. The crisis had passed, not because debts vanished, but because we faced them together, armed with honesty and a plan. Yet beneath that calm, I could feel the tremors of change rippling through our lives. No longer could we pretend money problems would magically solve themselves. We had to reforge our trust, and I was determined to help them do just that. That Monday morning, I arrived at my office feeling strangely buoyant. My BlackBerry chimed with a calendar reminder, 10 a.m. call with Shanghai green tech investors. The Chinese New Year might have ended, but its spirit of renewal lingered, and it was time to harness it. Only 2 weeks earlier, I'd forwarded my Mandarin, fluent resume to Green Tech's New York liaison, Miss Lin Hui, after discovering she admired any foreign partner who showed genuine language effort. Lily and Mandarin had revealed Jason's secret, but they'd also opened doors I'd never dared push on before. My boss, Graham, raised an eyebrow as I dialed into the video conference room. Green Tech? He asked, leaning over. You speak to them in Mandarin or English? He smirked. Make sure you don't embarrass yourself. I smiled confidently. Don't worry, I've got this. As the screen flickered to life, I greeted them, Nin Ho Lin Zhang, Yu Shi Lili Carter. Lin's face brightened, her eyes lit up. She introduced 2 colleagues, Mr. Wang, head of R&D, and Miss Zhao, VP of Business Development. We spent the first 10 minutes in Mandarin, discussing AeroBloom's modular design, sensor calibration algorithms, and the patent amendments we just secured in Europe. Their heads nodded in evident approval. Then I switched to English for clarity with Graham and our CFO, who hovered in the background. It was a masterstroke. I demonstrated cultural fluency yet kept technical details precise. By the time we wrapped up, Green Tech committed to a pilot of 20 pods in Shanghai's Pudong district by Q3, with an option for 200 more if performance matched their high standards. I exhaled with relief. Graham slapped me on the back. "Not bad, Carter," he said, half smile genuine this time. "Not bad at all." Back at home that evening, I found Jason in the garage, dust swirling around half-assembled AeroBloom prototypes. He'd insisted on helping me retool the pods while negotiating with Atlas Plastics. We'd all agreed that pulling together on the business could rebuild bridges. "Hey," I said, sliding the door open. "How's production prep?" He looked up, eyes tired but determined. "We're on schedule. The molds arrive tomorrow. I wanted to thank you." He hesitated, then laughed softly. "For not disowning me completely." I set my bag down. "You earned your shot back. But remember, it's a two-way street." I patted the prototype. "These pods need you just as much as we need you. Your API work is already integrated. They'll go to shipping next week." He exhaled, relief and pride mixing. "I missed this, building something real, especially side by side with you." I smiled, glad you're back on the team. At our first all-hands meeting with Jason present, I addressed the staff. "This is a new era for AeroBloom. We've secured GreenTech's pilot, finalized our patent claims in the US and Europe, and realigned our production timeline. We're on track to deliver 500 pods by year-end." I let the news sink in, gauging reactions, programmers nodding, marketers exchanging excited whispers, designers pumping fists. Then I turned serious. But none of this would matter without integrity at home or at work. We faced a test of that integrity, and we overcame it. Moving forward, let's commit to transparency, to asking for help, and to never letting pride keep us from doing what's right. I locked eyes with Jason, who nodded, chin lifted. The applause that followed felt different, not polite, but heartfelt. Many staff came up afterward, patting Jason on the back, telling him they understood mistakes happen. It was a moment of collective healing, more powerful than any product launch. 2 months later, in late spring, the first shipment of AeroBloom hydropods arrived in Shanghai. I joined Miss Lin and Mr. Wang for the grand unboxing at their green roof headquarters, 10 gleaming pods neatly arrayed under LED grow lights. They tested water cycles, enzyme sensors, and spectral shifts while I translated for Graham and our VP Sarah, who called the pods beautifully engineered. A short ceremony followed. Lin's team planted microgreens in each pod, celebrating the official pilot launch with photos across WeChat moments. The partnership was front-page news in their in-house newsletter. Meanwhile, back home, our story became a selling point. AeroBloom goes global thanks to sister-brother team, read local tech blogs. I'd never imagined my Mandarin greeting would end up granting me this credibility, but it had, transforming an embarrassing slip by Jason into a family legend of redemption and resilience. My parents even printed out one of the Chinese press releases and pinned it to the fridge beside Grandma's potpourri collection. That summer, as New York's humidity climbed, we hosted our first East Coast AeroBloom Summit on a rooftop in Brooklyn. Investors, architects, and urban policymakers gathered to see the pods in action. Among them were my parents, strolling past basil, cilantro, and cherry tomato vines. Mom paused by one pod, inhaled deeply. "It's so alive," she said softly. Dad grinned. "That's life, dear." He looked at Jason, then me. "You two really pulled this off." I scratched my head. "Had a lot of help." Jason stepped beside me. "And a lot of mistakes to learn from." He winked, the first time he'd ever used humor to own up. The crowd chuckled. "I speak enough Mandarin now to say, 谢谢, Emma," he said, voice loud enough for passers-by. "Thank you, Emma." I felt my cheeks flush. "You're welcome," I replied, slipping into Mandarin for him, then switching back to English. "But you're the real hero here. Taking responsibility, joining me in building this dream." He looked at me, eyes shining. Couldn't ask for a better partner. That evening, after the summit's panels and rooftop dinner wound down, I gathered my chosen family, my parents, Mia, Jason, Maya, and a handful of close colleagues, around a low table lit by sparklers. We shared hot bowls of rice porridge and stir-fried greens. As fireworks boomed above the East River, I raised my glass. "To mistakes," I began, "which teach us when they're forgiven." "To forgiveness," Jason added. "To family," Dad said. The cornucopia of voices that followed, Laughter, hugs, clinks of glasses felt like the most authentic celebration we'd ever had. No pretenses, no hiding behind pride. Just honesty, accountability, and unity. In the weeks that followed, our Shanghai pilot reports returned stellar yields, 45% higher than expected, and interest soared in Tokyo, London, and Sydney. Back at head office, we hired 2 more engineers, opened a second production line in Newark, and began talks with major grocery chains. Our story, the Chinese greeting that exposed a lie, the family debt that forced accountability, and the rebirth of trust, became a case study in resilience. I spoke about it at industry forums. When you share a language, you share a culture of honesty. Let every greeting remind you that to build something lasting, you must first build each other up. As autumn leaves began to fall, I stood on a newly installed AeroBloom rooftop in Chelsea, a small array of pods bearing fresh chives, and watched Jason chatting with a potential client in Mandarin, curing their remaining doubts. He turned, caught my eye, and winked. We'd come a long way from that first New Year's greeting. Our secrets had been exposed, our pride tested, and our bonds reforged through challenge. And in that journey, we discovered that the real invention wasn't just the AeroBloom hydropod. It was the ability to embrace vulnerability, speak honestly, even in a foreign tongue, and grow stronger together, one shared word at a time.